I'm Gila Nehemia, sacred erotic self-love poet, mentor, author, and mystic. This is Collaboration Ascension Healing. I am so excited. Those of you who don't know me, I help chronic trauma men and women to really heal from their heart space and live their blissful erotic life through primarily writing. I'm also a writing empowerment coach. And I'm excited today because I have Kelly Myerson here with me. I'm very, very excited. We have a shared friend, Laura DeFranco, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Kelly before we start go into some questions. Kelly is an author, speaker, coach, and sleep expert who will cultivate space for you to emerge from stress and overwhelm, to lead and savor the life of your dreams. As an occupational therapist, Kelly has over 20 years of experience specializing in sensory integration techniques. Her background in occupational therapy provides a unique perspective on development and the human condition. She helps overwhelmed working moms light up the world by taking them from burnout to radiating joy, which is really exciting. Kelly, please tell us a little bit more about this. You said something here, this specializing in sensory integration techniques. Can you tell us what that is exactly?
Sure. So my background is in occupational therapy. So, and primarily working in pediatrics. So, sensory integrative therapies are looking at the brain and the nervous system and how it processes sensory information coming in. So, we can think in terms of the typical five senses that people think of: your sight, your smell, hearing, taste, and touch, right? So, we also work in three other zones of sensation, including your proprioception, which is your muscle joint input, your vestibular sense, which is your sense of movement and balance that lives inside your inner ear. And then also interoception, which is kind of a newer term, but that is sort of your inner knowing of all of your functions. So, you know, your gut and digestion, pain, and where you can find it in your body. So basically what I do is I understand how a child is processing, how a child is processing sensory information and understanding in those different zones, and then figuring out how we can create strategies for them to help them to be better able to function in the world. So for example, if a child is having a difficult time with sound, loud sounds are bothering them. So you could imagine them in a classroom and alarms going off, or a kid yelling in the hallway is going to distract them or make them go into fight or flight when they're trying to pay attention in class. So if we take that model and we apply it to ourselves as adults, so many of us are existing in a lot of stress and overwhelm, which means that we are living in that fight or flight, which is not where we're supposed to live. Those are survival mechanisms, but we don't really need them so often in our worlds now. But there's a problem. In our minds, we don't have the distinction of what's really happening and what stress is really occurring and what we're playing out in our minds and is causing us to feel stress. So we can very easily, just with our brains and our thinking, put ourselves into a state of fight or flight, or experience situations that put us into fight or flight. And there's two components of that autonomic nervous system. So the fight or flight is sympathetic. And then the other part of that is your parasympathetic. And your parasympathetic is your nervous system that helps you to rest, to digest. So all of that homeostasis function that your body needs to be able to do for you to be healthy and well is not accessible when you're always in sympathetic. They're supposed to work more in concert. You need them both. But when your sympathetic is so in function all the time, it hits everything. So you have stomach issues, you have difficulty sleeping, you have, this chronic stress that's always happening for you. So you're always up and you're never down. So what I can help people do is identify what is causing that stress in their lives, to understand that this is a nervous system function. So if you're experiencing stress, it's a thought pattern, it's a body pattern, something that we can identify for you and help you to overcome.
I have some questions because I'm not of like a medical background, and maybe some of my viewers may not be, because that's not normally how I speak. But I wanted to just kind of take it into my own terms, so that because maybe the viewers might be also that way. So I just wanted to make it clear for all of us.
I love that.
So the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, could we talk about them in terms of energies, like feminine and masculine? Would that make sense from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, I think what happens if our feminine and masculine is out of balance, we're probably existing in that sympathetic nervous system, right? So I think that's a great comparison between those two thought processes. So yeah, when you're in that masculine, that go, 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 and ignoring, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need rest, I'm tired, and just sort of that push through it, that's a very masculine energy. And let's face it, sometimes that's a great energy to have for certain aspects. But so many of us are out of alignment with our feminine nature and flow. And I will tell you from my own personal experience, the second I recognize that in myself and how that doesn't work for me, and yet I've spent probably 42 of my 44 years doing it, the magic that happens when you have that balance is incredible. And I'm sure you can speak so much more eloquently to that than I can, right?
Yes, I mean, that's all about what I am right now, is being in that balance. And I really feel like it's very attainable, and it may not be sustainable on a every day, because it's just challenging for us, because we're so used to being, I would say, like in that masculine energy, or sometimes in the feminine energy, being extreme. But I also feel like it's not always 50-50, to be honest with you. It's like 80-20, it's like whatever feels good for you that day. But allowing that, I think that go, go, go needs a moment of breath and stillness, and that moment could be all that you need to like take that other step instead of the coffee. Like instead of, I can't even drink coffee, to be honest with you. I never really liked coffee, and I would always give me stomach aches, and I was just finally like, okay, I'm not doing this. It doesn't help. I don't mind tea, like matcha or black tea or whatever, but I normally wouldn't choose that either, and so because I guess I'm to really, and I want to talk about this with you because I want to see how it's related to sleep. To really get back, for me, it was really just doing what felt good for me. And I'm really not the person that is like, I consider myself a leader. And actually, one of my former clients even said that I'm in the masculine energy. And I was like, me? I feel like I'm totally feminine. But I take on projects, I do things that I follow my intuition, but to me, that's still like, what I hope to do, or what I'm like, I hope is not the right word, but my intention is that I follow my heart and my mind goes after. So I'm just asking for people who might be still, they may be in that space that I'm in, but sometimes we can't sleep, even with the moon cycles. Like when it's a full moon and a new moon, I just can't sleep. It's no matter what I do, I can drink cacao, I can just, feel that, but I just cannot sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so true. We can be so disrupted in terms of our sleep for so many different reasons. But I love how you bring that in, because there is this ebb and flow to our cycles, the cycles of the moon. It's sort of part of being on this planet, right? And let's be honest, we're on this planet, but we're not of it, right? So we're always like, what is going on? But I love that. I love applying some curiosity to that. And yeah, I totally relate to what you're saying. And I think what I'm noticing about you is you've got this really great tuned in nature to yourself. And you're like, yeah, people talk about coffee. Coffee's awesome, but it doesn't work for me. And I think when people can get to that place for themselves where they can be tuned in and even recognize this is not working for me. I mean, I hit a point in my life where I was like doing all the things and push, and achievement mentality and perfectionism. It's burning me out. I'm exhausted. I don't like it. It's not fun. I don't want to do it. And I don't know if it's being in my 40s, because people tell me this is like a thing that happens in your 40s. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do anything that doesn't light me up, that doesn't feel like fun. Now, listen, there are things that I do because they have to be done. You have to clean the toilet. Is it fun? It's not fun. It's gross if you don't do it. So you do it, right? But that doesn't mean that it has to be something that drags me down. So right. I think one of the ways I've sort of hijacked my limbic system and my amygdala and put my mind to work for me, which is something I like to teach people. That's all about making those mindset shifts. Is like, I used to dread laundry, but I've changed my mind about that. I love doing laundry. There is something so therapeutic about like taking it from beginning to end, about the smell of the laundry and folding and cleaning and putting away in my nice little folds. It feels good to me. It's meditative. It's therapeutic, and it was not the actual task. The task didn't change. It's my mindset and my thought process about the task and the intention behind it. So many of us are trapped in these routines that feel oppressive to us. But one, do you have to do it? Maybe not, or can I change the way that I think about it? Can I shift it into something that feels great? And that's something that I love to do for people about sleep, because a lot of people will say things like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'm like, well, that's not that. Let's just like erase that from our lexicon entirely, because that like people like to say that and very cavalier. And I'm like, well, you're going to die sooner if you don't sleep. So can we make that part of our conversation? That seems a little harsh. That's not really usually my MO, but like you start to feel that way. Like, this is your human vessel. Like, can we not take care of her? Can we not give her what she needs to like function and survive? I mean, how much money will we spend on like face creams to get rid of wrinkles on our faces, but we won't like do something that's very natural for us and get enough sleep? So I call BS. I say, it is completely possible for you to both get great sleep and be very effective and efficient in your life. And so that is like my mantra. We're doing this, people. We're going to make sleep really cool again for people, and getting a great night's sleep a great thing, instead of like the mom conversation about, well, guess how much sleep I got last night? Well, I got less than you. Like, we're celebrating it like it's a competition. Who can be most exhausted? I'm out of that competition. I quit. I'm not doing it. You're laughing because I know this is like what goes on in our conversations.
Especially when you're a young mom, which yes. We all were, like not everybody, but a lot of people were, at some point in their lives. And it was really, I have 3 children, came 2 years after each other. And so that was challenging, maybe for the first 6 years of my life, or when I was having them. But for me, sleep is like super important. You know, actually, I feel like I get a lot of downloads. Like I'm like totally connected into the astral worlds when I'm sleeping. So,
Yes.
and I love to take naps. You know, I mean, I have that luxury. You know, not everybody does, but when I feel tired, and I think I don't know if you find this with your clients, but I've now become more attuned to myself. Like I'll go for the sweet or the something, and I'm like, listen, I'm gonna have to take a nap. You know, or just like sit quiet for like 20 minutes, even if I'm not sleeping.
Totally.
Because I shouldn't be doing that. Like that's emotional eating. You know, that's like I'm depriving myself of something and thinking that food or tea or something will help me to lift me up, but that's not going to help the rest of my day.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you brought that up because I'm sort of a, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm sort of a science brain nerd. Like I totally nerd out on this stuff and I will read and explore everything I can to find out about it. So I was like, okay, what is the causal link between weight gain and not sleeping? So I took a deep dive into all of the research that's out there on that. So this is basically what I learned. If you are not sleeping well, you are probably going to struggle if you're trying to maintain a certain weight or you're trying to lose weight for a number of different reasons. The one that you're talking about is when you are feeling so exhausted and fatigued. What happens is you get into that part of your brain that is all about pleasure and feeling good versus being in this part of your brain where you're using your cognition and good choice making, right? So you've made a commitment. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to eat more vegetables. I'm not going to reach for the sweet stuff. But you're right. Your body is craving that sleep and that rest. So it can't get it right then and there. So it's like, okay, what we got here? Let's see. Okay, cake. Cake feels like it's going to hit that pleasure center real good. And so we don't make the best decisions. So you can see this, you know, somebody who says, okay, tomorrow morning, I'm getting up, I'm going for my mile run, I'm going to have my green smoothie, but then you stay up too late watching TV. You have trouble getting up, you hit the snooze button. When you finally get up, your motivation is just tapped out, right? This happens to so many of us. We have great ideas and then we just sort of tank. So, one of the great ways to fix that is to be getting enough sleep. And napping is awesome. It's such a great tool to use. And it's such a smart choice that you make when you can say, if I just lay down and rest my eyes for a few minutes and just give my body a chance to rest, then I can kind of come back and make some adult decisions instead of like having a little 3-year-old with her arms crossed. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to have the cake, right? so, you know, we want to have more access to our cognition and our clear thinking versus just responding to our body's desire to feel good. And conversely, we want to use those pleasure centers in ways that get us excited about the things maybe we're not so excited about.
Yeah, I liked how you said that because I agree with you. Like sometimes, you know, I'm a single mom with 3 kids and I have a few animals. So my house gets messy very frequently. And you know, it just even to get the kids used to help me, but they don't always. So, you know, just to kind of get into that mood of cleaning, I totally relate to you. And I've it is very cathartic actually. When I decide to do it, it becomes a very cathartic event, you know, and I really enjoy the hours that it's clean before it gets messy again.
Yes.
So I wanted to, I think, and so I agree with you about mindset. I think it's really important. So anyone that isn't in that space, you know, definitely connect with Kelly or myself. I think that's super important. And I also wanted to go back about the cake, you know, because I used to work in high tech and I'd be in the office and got to tell you that 3 o'clock time, like after lunch, especially because in Israel, like we get fed, you know, like we can order and they pay for it. So we have these really nice meals, you know, even if it's light, like sushi or something, we still have something nice. And then you got to keep working until it's like 6. And how do you do that, you know? And it was always a challenge for me when I used to be in that space. And many people, I would see a lot of people coming into the kitchen, drinking coffee, hanging out, you know, it was just hard to stay. And I don't feel like, I feel it's actually, honestly speaking, it's not, everyone has a different levels of concentration. You know, how long you can stay in that cognitive space, if you want to put it in your terms, in that cognitive space, and not, you know, resting or taking a break. And even I would go out for a walk and stuff, and I still couldn't get back there. But when I work by my, you know, in my own house on my own terms, I can have those spurts and like rest and then do something else. Like I'm able to maneuver. But in the office, because of the confined space and things, it was very difficult for me.
Yeah. And it's so masculine, right?
Oh, yeah. That's without a doubt. But I think it's kind of, to be honest, I'd say it's unnatural. It's unnatural to be in a space confined for 9 hours and expect high productivity.
Right. But we do, don't we? Yeah. Especially in this country.
Yeah. In most, also in Israel. I mean, it's similar.
I know it's like it's inhuman. And yet, like, we've kind of put ourselves in this place where, like, if we want all the things we want, we've got to exist at this level. And again, I'm going to say BS. No, we don't. We don't have to. And I love your example because, you know, you've got this natural rhythm and flow between tapping in and using your energy to the things that you want to accomplish. And then also getting into that rest zone. So you have this beautiful rhythm that's happening for you. And so many of us are out of that rhythm. And what happens if we're always in the cognitive space, always in our head, we're also not in our body. So we start ignoring the signs and symptoms that there are things going on for us that we need to address, right? And I think for me, the times that I've sort of really crashed and burned out, it was something I ignored or wasn't even aware of. Like I had no idea this was going on for me, or I ignored it, or I pushed it away, you know? And as a result, I end up all the way down, completely depleted. And from that space, then you have no choice but to go into the mode of self-care, health, and well-being. And you're not available for all the other things that you want to accomplish. So it's sort of this vicious cycle that people get on. And we have so many chronic illnesses that I think are linked, or I can say are linked to our habits and behaviors. You know, and sleep being a major one, diet being another one, but you can see how those two kind of play off of each other. The choices that we're making in terms of what we're eating and how we're sleeping and resting is like a strong causal link.
I want to talk about that for a moment, because I remember being in another conference where someone else was talking about food, and he was saying like to just eat when you're hungry. Like, you know, I don't know if you have kids, and I have kids, you know, and it's like sometimes like as a mom, you know, you want to be like, well, you want to make sure they get every, you know, nutrient they need, right?
Right,
You know?
exactly.
Like, what, you didn't eat breakfast, you know, or you didn't blah, 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 you know. I've stopped that actually. And so he said, you know, and I agree because sometimes it becomes a habit. Like every morning I've got to eat blah, 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 you know, and I was doing that. And then I was just like, but I'm not really hungry. You know, so I'm not going to eat it, you know, or bananas have been my thing for a while, you know, and I looked at it, like, bananas are good for you. Bananas are even good to lose weight, they say. Anyway, so I've been eating them, you know, and just following my own rhythm with that. And seasonally, you know, it's really important to eat in the season, but I think it could also help. I'm just asking, I don't know. It could help sleep. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you're experiencing heartburn because you're eating foods that don't agree with you or eating too late, sure, that definitely affects your sleep, right? So yeah, I really think, you know, I'm with you. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like starving and I want to eat. And sometimes I could go until noon and not. And I wouldn't even say I'm like falling into intermittent fasting. I'm more so listening to my body and getting better at it. So I do love coffee, and I do drink coffee every day. I sort of limit myself because I know if I have more than 2 cups and have any like after the noon time, because caffeine stays in your body for 12 up to 12 hours, depending on how you react to caffeine. So like there are sometimes I'm like, no, but I've really started to tune into my intuition. And like some mornings I wake up and I'm like, I don't really want coffee. I want tea, or I just want water, or I kind of feel like a lot of protein right now. And I mean, it only makes sense that your body would need different things at different times. And kids are born with like the perfect system, right? They know exactly when they need to eat, what they want. And we sort of break them of that. And we put them into these time slots of this is when you eat, this is what you eat here. But you can see like one day they're like jamming on vegetables at dinner. And the next night they're like, no, I don't want that. I want more meat. Or they're just going for the carbs. But they're sort of reacting to their system and how they're growing. So they might need more carbohydrates. Whereas like we probably don't need as many carbohydrates as we get older, but they're building their bodies still. So they might need that more, or they might need the protein, and they kind of gravitate towards those things. So it makes it a little trickier to have them just a free for all. And maybe that's not the thing to do. I don't know. That's not my area of expertise. I could just say as a mom, I've sort of noticed that. And then when they're not hungry, you know, like when your kids are sick, they don't really want to eat. And I've always had a pediatrician that's like, if he doesn't want to eat, it's fine. You know, he's not in a state that you're going to worry about him starving. So just go with the flow. I was like, well, that's a great way to think of it. Like go with the flow. So yes, you need a certain amount of water in the day and you do need calories to keep you going. But I also think sometimes you're processing stuff and going through, especially if you've had something like me. I have a lot of food allergies. So and sensitivities. So if I've kind of been a little lax on what I'm eating, I feel that difference in my body, and it sort of creates this lag and shutdown. And then my body is like, okay, let's just take a little break, go back to simplicity, and then like can start to add things in.
So yeah, I want to ask you about that because I think that at least I've seen sleep patterns depending on, obviously things that are going on in my life, personally that are, occupying my emotions or my mind, but also my, the food intake. So how, basically my question to you is, do you connect your clients more to what's going on within them? Like, what's your process when people are having issues with sleep? I think it's an important thing that we should address
Totally.
when people are listening to this.
Yeah. So I definitely bring the science background, in my sensory processing knowledge, but I look through 3 different lenses and they're overlapping circles. So there's environment, mindset, and habits. And then where those 3 overlap, that's your sleep. So if you want your best sleep ever, then you have to have some cohesion between those 3 areas. So environment is your sleep environment. So what does it look like? How does it feel? What does it make you feel when you enter your bedroom? Is it, oh my God, look at all the mess in here. So, and I always like start by saying I've made all the mistakes. So I am not sitting in judgment. I'm like, we're in the same place, right? So those are people who have just ignored their bedroom as a sacred space, and it has become the dumping ground, the unfinished projects. And so if that's you, it's going to affect your sleep. And I can say, I talk about in the Ultimate Guide for Self-Healing about my own journey as a mom and like recognizing that the unfinished stuff, the clutter, the mess, the laundry baskets, the toys everywhere, the never made bed, piles of clothes on the floor, all of those things really informed how I was feeling. And it was sort of this vicious cycle. And I had so much anxiety about going to bed, 1, because I had a kid who wasn't sleeping very well, but 2, because my environment was just such a mess. It felt horrible to be in there. So that's one zone we can target. The other is mindset. And so those are my busy brained people. And they typically fall into a couple of categories or a mixture of 2. So when you're really busy brained, you lay your head on the pillow and all of a sudden it gets real busy in there. So whether it's stress or replaying things, or it's, creative people, entrepreneurs who are coming up with new ideas, and they never stop moving and acting on their ideas. So since there's been no stillness, they haven't had time to process what's coming in at them and kind of get it out. So for those people, I recommend you do some mind dumping 30 minutes before bed, away from your bedroom or not in your bed, and just mind dump everything on your mind in a way that you're not cataloging and putting it into categories, but you're just putting everything that's coming to you, so that when you rest your head on the pillow, you've already given your mind a chance to dump. And then also adding at the beginning of your day some sort of stillness, whether it's meditation, if that works for you, or like I talk to a lot of people who have never meditated, and that seems a little overwhelming and like something they have to learn to do. So I suggest just sitting in stillness and quiet by yourself for like 5 minutes and breathing. Like just be a human for a minute, right? And just be in your body and breathe. And then when you're done, like your mind is going to come up with something. For me, it's creative inspiration or it's a poem. You know, for you, it might be like just a creative way of looking at a problem that you had. And then you just write it down. And if you want to then take, you know, from your mind dumps, parts of that go to your grocery list or your to-do list or your work list or whatever it is, go for it. But it doesn't have to serve that purpose. It can just be emptying your mind of the things that are on your mind. Then the third category is habits, which we talked a little bit about already. So caffeine being one of them. But another one is, and I know this is going to make people sad, but technology and screens and the light that we're giving our eyes. So like you said before, being in a building with artificial light all day long is not natural for our human bodies. So giving ourselves all of this light and stimulation does not allow our minds and our bodies to relax and be ready to shut down and fall asleep. So the recommendation is 2 to 3 hours before bed, you stop having the light coming into your eyes. So what I've done in my research is I found the worst time to be giving light into your eyes in terms of your sleep is between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. So these are people who are going to pick up their phones when they wake up in the middle of the night and start scrolling. And that is probably the worst thing you can do. So give up that habit. I recommend either plugging your phone in across the room or in an adjacent room. You know, there is so much technology around this that you can use to work for you. So I set mine do not disturb from probably like 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. And then you have your favorites list. So if somebody on your favorites list is calling you, it's going to ring, but it's not going to give you all your notifications for Clubhouse and Facebook. And so you could just unplug from that. And it's totally okay. I think the fact that we can always be plugged in is a draw. That's hitting our pleasure center, right? We feel good about that. We feel connected all the time. But we are meant to have some downtime and some alone time, and we are meant to sleep well. So that technology piece is huge, and it does take some effort on your part to just change those habits out. So like just switching your phone being plugged in next to your bed versus across the room, you are unlikely to get up and go get your phone. Okay, maybe you will. Maybe you will because you really like it, but you're going to wake up and it's not going to be there, and you're going to remember what you intended and kind of stick with it. And another tip and trick for that is getting light into our eyes in the early morning as the sun starts to come up, like that first hour or so, is going to set an alarm that our body is already ready for to release melatonin at night. So you get that light, 12 to 14 hours later, your body is releasing melatonin for you to be ready to fall asleep. So I love having all that science and the actual like design of the human body, because you can use that as cues as to what you can do for yourself. So that's a big one. And I've done this for so many years with my families, working on their kids' sleep, you know, those 2 to 3 hours before bed, going into like quieter voices, lower lights, lighter activity, and just getting your body to kind of step down and get into a state of rest. So if you want to feel really good about it, you know, and not like, well, now I can't do anything because I can't have my phone, you know, what could you be doing in that time that would just feel really good to you? Is it reading a book? Is it taking a bath or a hot shower? Is it having a really fun, like, facial routine? You know, whatever it is that lights you up, like, infuse yourself with that. Make it feel like a really good caretaking process for you, because I think that's going to get you over that, like, initial, like we talked about that 3-year-old before with her arms folded, like, but I want to talk to people on my phone, you know, and get you to that place of, but I could take really good care of myself, so I'm more available to myself and other people during the day.
I love that. You know, I have to say I am definitely guilty with the phone. But I have, like, there was a book my father gave me a long time ago. I started actually reading it to my children aloud, and I haven't read to them since they were little kids, and they're now like preteens. So that made me feel really good. And I got a new book, and even my own poetry book that I got. You know, I started actually opening, because I was brought up, you know, when I was a kid, there were no phones. So I remembered always reading at night, and I read, I don't know if you're familiar with her, Barbara Marcianek. She wrote The Bringers of the Dawn. Anyway,
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's about the Palladians. Anyway, it's channeling, and it was great. Like, I was so addicted to it. And I remembered that's what I used to do all the time. I would read myself to sleep. You know, sometimes I'd read into the night if I was really interested in a book. But I was always like, and it's perfect. It was always perfect for me, because all of the things that I was reading about would come into my dream state.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was that exploration. It's always, I loved books, you know, and I still love to read, but especially when I would read novels, because there's so much going on. It's like a whole world. And reading, you know, my book also, like all of our books, are on ebooks and on Kindles and stuff. And I would read on it, but there was something I was missing. And I always felt that. And a lot of people tell me that. They're like, you know, and I'd publish something, or I'd be co-author, and they're like, is there a paperback? Can I write a paperback? Totally. So for those of us that have been of a different age, you know, I think we can relate to that. And those people who are younger, I actually think some, you know, even my children said, you know, they were in Zoom, probably like a lot of kids, because of the quarantine. And they wanted to be in person. You know, they were like, we can't learn this way. You know, they even said that. So I agree with you with the screens. It's kind of out of control, you know, even in my own house. So I love that tip. I'm definitely going to use it for my own family. So those of you who are listening, I think these are really good tips. And I know, I've heard it many times, but I think it's that taking that next step, right? You know, that totally. Habit, changing the habit. And I would do it even for a week, and I'd be like, oh no, it's a crazy addiction. But I think that the more that we are honest with ourselves, and this is what I've been into, you know, just truly, is like, the more honest we are with ourselves, the deeper we can have connections and relationships with others. And sleep is really one of them, actually. You know, and I know you probably know this, but there was a movie out there, I think a few movies, right, of the people that couldn't sleep. And then they found somebody, and they were even like hired. I think there was one movie, they hired somebody to sleep next to them because they just couldn't sleep. But then they found, like, they weren't quiet. They weren't able to relax. And this particular energy of that person allowed them to relax. And they didn't even do anything. They were just like, you know, hanging out, completely platonic. But that allowed, and so there's energy, you know, maybe from that perspective too, like, and, you know, and I think the phones, there's certain energies that are coming from the phone.
Sure. The EMFs and your Wi-Fi signal and.
Right. Yeah. And also our minds, you know, we're still operating. We're still thinking. Like you said, the mind dump has been really important to me. I've started to write also before I go to sleep, and that's been so therapeutic. So I'm really glad you mentioned those tips, and I'll definitely write them down in the notes.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. And it's such a good point. You know, our brains have different wavelengths of activity, right? So delta, we've probably heard of before, that's your sleep. Right before that is theta, which is like kind of like that sleepy, dreamy state, which is so fun to be in. It just feels good because you know sleep is coming. Above that is alpha, which is kind of our quiet alert state. So like you said, reading a book, you're in alpha. Beta is more like what you're talking about, like active thinking, doing, exercise, moving. And then high beta is stress. So the reason I like to talk about that is, you can kind of think of it, if you're getting into bed at high beta, then you're so far from delta. So we want to not do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't even lay down if you're not tired and sleepy. I mean, yes, you want to give yourself that sleep opportunity of 7 to 9 hours, right? But you need to give yourself time to come down to a state. You want to be getting into bed in that theta state so that you've done all the work to get yourself to be ready to sleep. So, and there's so many ways to do that. Reading is a great one because it's sort of a quiet, active activity. And for many of us, like I kind of like envision seeing adults when I was a kid, like sitting in bed reading up with their reading glasses on and just kind of like falling into a repose. Like you'll fall asleep reading, but I also love what you're talking about. Like it can become the things that you're dreaming about, which to me, like that's a whole other conversation and kind of fun and exciting. But when you're sleeping well, you have more lucid dreams and you have consistent sleep. And I totally believe that we are accessing other times, places, spaces. Like it's such a cool thing. And when you're in this healing journey and you're really exploring your life spiritually, you need to be getting enough sleep because you can't even have access to that if you're not. So yeah, I love that. There are other things too. So like if you love to read, but you can't kind of sit there with a book, you can listen to a story. That's also a great way. Like busy brain people, if you're having trouble falling asleep, you can listen to either a book on tape or a story. I love like the Calm app is one that I use. It has kids sleep stories too. So if you have kids who have trouble falling asleep, like when my son is really struggling, like he'll say, can we just listen to a story? And they have these very soothing voices and they read, and usually we all fall asleep, right? Not just my son. But that is another way, or very calming music. I mean, some of it is frequency designed to get you into that theta delta state. And some of it just kind of gets you in like that real nice, calm mood. So why not? It's fun. Like we forget about these things. Like you said, we forget about the things that really work for us and we find so incredibly enjoyable.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. We've already been talking for quite a while, so I wanted to jump into some of the book projects that you coming up. Can you please share it with us?
Sure. So we just got out The Ultimate Guide to Self-Healing, Volume 4. I am joining a bunch of fantastic authors with Diana Leader in Find Your Voice, Save Your Life, Volume 2. So we're getting ready to start that project. Also doing a project with Jen Piscino, which is called Sacred Medicine, which is going to be such a fun and exciting book. And Hamali is doing this beautiful book called Sacred Death, which I'm so thrilled to be a part of. It's all about helping caregivers manage and care for themselves through the transition of loved ones in their lives. So, I mean, what better time to have something like that? So these projects are just such gorgeous opportunities to share stories and tools. And if you haven't participated in any of these, I really encourage you. The people that are writing right now and sharing their healing tools are just offering such beautiful gifts to the world in a way that is so accessible for so many of us. So yeah, I'm sure you could share a dozen wonderful books with your viewers because there are so many opportunities right now. Just say yes.
Yes, I think it's so important. I think our stories are super important. I agree with you with that. That's something that I do with my work, when we empower ourselves, and many of my clients are writers and avid readers. And so when we allow ourselves, gives permission to ourselves to realize that we are divine beings and we have something important to say. And even if you're in, in the field that Jen's in or in the field that I'm in, we're not the same person. So we have unique experiences that are going to come from a slightly different angle that millions of people want to know about.
Yes.
So I would highly recommend anyone who's thinking about writing to connect with me. I do a lot of work with that, and just to give yourself the opportunity to just put it down. You know, even for your own families, even for yourself, regardless of anyone, I feel like writing, that's why I do it, because I've realized it's just healing in and of itself. Sometimes the stories we have in our mind about our partners or whatever relationships we're in, even about work, or our own, our like you were saying, the mind dump. I think that's super important, because there's so many nuggets in that, that we could use, that sometimes we don't even know how to take action, but we are, it's such a, like, these reeling wheels are constantly turning, but when you put it down, it's like, oh wait, it's not really that hard. Like,
it's so true.
we
make it
that
hard.
step. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really exciting. I know I didn't get a chance to ask you exactly how you got into the sleep therapy, but maybe you could just tell us really quickly as we're wrapping up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're all our like best coaching client, right? So I've struggled with sleep my whole life, and just had an epiphany that all of the things that I had learned as an occupational therapist, I could absolutely apply to my own life. And what I love to do for people is, yes, I can give you the science and the neuroanatomy behind it. But what people really want when they're struggling with sleep is solutions. What do I do? Give me the practical steps. So I've taken something that we should be able to do that seems very simple, and made it an easy to understand and easy to identify, and help yourself in terms of what is the first best step to take to move towards getting much better sleep, not because of the sleep, but because of what it affords you in your life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, it's so important. How can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more? And, and I know you gave us a free gift, if you can tell us about that as well.
Totally. So you can check everything out on my website. It's beingwellwithkelly.com. You can also find me on social media. I have a free Facebook group, Being Well with Kelly, on Instagram at Being Well with Kelly. And yes, I have a weekly wellness tips and tricks that I send out on Wednesdays. And when you sign up for that, I have a 10-piece tips and tricks for better sleep, and also a joy list. So a little extra bonus in there for you to kind of come to terms with all the things that you love to do that you can kind of infuse back into your life.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So definitely take Kelly up on that amazing offer, and all the notes will be, all the details will be in wherever this is going, into YouTube and variety of podcasts. So all the notes will be in the details. And, so you can easily connect with Kelly. And I'm just really excited about your projects, and I'm really glad that we met and had this really amazing conversation, and mixing in the science with the emotional and the ethereal. I think it's super important, because it's that balance, that we've lost, but we can find. So, and I think the additional tools that we have, in terms of our modern society, allows us to explore all options. So I love the work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Same here. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. And if anybody wants to know, like, my book is still in promo, To Real Love, the poetry book, it's still in promo for the ebook, 99 cents on most ebook platforms, online platforms, and the paperback is out as well. And I am actually working on an anthology with another 10 authors. It'll be out later this year. It's entitled, actually the title isn't set, but this is the idea, Power Struggles, Moving from Silence, Transmuting Silence, Injustice into Sovereignty. So really talking about the patriarchy, and understanding how that has actually affected us as a society, and we're not talking just about men versus women, we're talking about society, and how really awareness allows us to move into a different paradigm. So I'm very, very excited about this project, and we're just going to be kicking off this coming weekend. And so, yes, I'm excited about all of our projects.
Amazing.
And our book projects, and allowing each other to communicate, and explore all the options that are out there for healing and different ways of conscious living. So I'm really happy about all the work that all of us are doing. And if you want to be part of that, like, definitely connect with us, and we can help you. And really just, you can have the best life, just like Kelly said in the very beginning, or as I introduced her, the best life you want, is available to you. It's just allowing yourself, if you're resonating, to take that next leap of faith, believing in your desires, your fulfillment. Would you like to share anything before we end?
I'm here for all of that. I love what you said about conscious living. And I think if we boiled everything that we talked about down to it, it is that. It's getting into that state of consciousness and presence. And I'm here for all of it. I love it.
Fantastic. So thank you so much, Kelly. It's so great to be with you today. And yes, I look forward to having another conversation when your books are out.
100%. I'm here.
Great. Thank you for listening, everyone.